Hey, this is Paula.
Hi, and this is Patricia.
And we are so happy to have Barry Anderson back with us. Thank you so much, Barry, for coming back. I felt like we had so much more to explore.
Well, thanks so much. I had a really great time, and I really appreciate being back.
Yeah, Barry, you've spent many decades creating monsters for the silver screen, but you've also had some chilling real-life encounters offset.
Yeah, I actually have. And throughout my life, I've had a lot of paranormal experiences.
One of the things that I would like to start with, and that kind of leads to how you even got here, is that you spent a lot of time working for Ripley's Believe It or Not. But believe it or not, the story of how you got here is a little more extraordinary.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. You know, I was living down in South Florida. That's where I started my career. And my wife and I, we had just gotten married. And Hurricane Andrew came. And the year that we got married, like the same month that we got married. And, you know, after that, the following year, we kind of were spinning our wheels a bit, and she wanted to move from South Florida. And I was really worried and nervous about that. But, you know, because I had a lot of connections and worked with certain directors and was, you know, doing pretty well, busy, you know, in many ways. But, you know, we were looking for something a little more steady because film production and television production is so unpredictable that she kind of asked, can you just look for a regular, normal job? And I was like, that is not an option. But like, what do you mean by that?
What does that mean?
A steady job with some benefits. How's that sound? But you know what? I thought we knew some people up in Orlando area in Central Florida, and there was all the theme parks, and it seemed like the smart choice. There were also film stages here, so. But I was still really worried about this whole move. So one day I dropped her off at work she was working at a salon, and I was heading back home, and I saw a sign that said psychic fair, and just sporadically I just made a U-turn, turned around, and spent the last $25 in my pocket and got a reading from some woman that was at this fair. And as soon as I walked in, I said something to her, and she said, "Oh, you just read my mind." And I can't remember exactly what I said to her, but whatever it was, apparently she had been thinking that. It was some kind of just off-the-cuff comment. I don't even know why I said it, but these things happen to me all the time. Well, anyways, I sat down with her, and she looked at me, and she's like, "Are you thinking about moving?" And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Oh my gosh, get home and pack your bags. You need to go. There's an opportunity waiting for you. Seriously, you got to listen to me. There's just some amazing things that are going to happen for you if you just make this decision to go," which gave me a little more encouragement. And so I wasn't even sure if I wanted to tell my wife that I spent $25 getting a reading, but maybe I did or not. I don't know. But anyway, she described to me that when I got up to Central Florida, that I was going to get a job interview, and I was going to walk into a tall glass building, and there were going to be two gentlemen waiting at the front door for me. And I thought, well, that's kind of a weird and very precise, prediction. But sure enough, within 6 months of me being up here, by odd little chance, I got an interview for Ripley Entertainment, who just had moved recently to the Central Florida area. And when I went there was a big glass building, and there were two statues on each side of the door of figures as I walked and approached the door. And I thought, oh my gosh, there they are. I'm going to get a job here. And she said it's going to be a long-lasting career. And I ended up with the company for 17 years. And for several of those years, I ended up working as the director of the art department, where we created museum figures and props and repaired antiquities and so forth for the museums. And they had many different entertainment companies and not companies, but venues. So worldwide. So that turned into an incredible opportunity.
So, talking about Ripley's, I mean, that probably opened you up to lots of different things when we talk about paranormal and everything. Tell me a little bit about how you really got into kind of the paranormal.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Western New York, in Chautauqua County, and my grandmother was actually a well-known clairvoyant psychic. while I was growing up. And she was truly incredibly gifted, shockingly gifted. And of course, we just growing up, that was normal for us, so we were just like, grandma just knows stuff. But she was a bit of a celebrity and would go on radio and television programs quite often. And as a kid, I remember going with her and my grandfather and sitting in the green room while grandma was on camera or, be talking to the mic on the radio shows. And sometimes they would have people call in and ask questions, and she would. That's the thing that's remarkable is she did not need tools and that. She could just pick up off from a person off of the phone often, or just meeting somebody. She would be able to give a reading. And so she really had an incredible gift. And, apparently I inherited some of that because I've had psychic experiences, paranormal experiences, since I was a small child. Even at the age of 4, I remember seeing ghostly apparitions as a child at night, and going through a lot of really weird experiences at an early age. But when I was a child, my family bought a very haunted home, and my siblings and I, we suffered in that house in some ways, because it was quite frightening. But our parents just would not acknowledge us children, and actually in recent times, I've done an investigation of my childhood home and contacted 3 other families that lived in there, and it's unbelievable that what I've opened up regarding that. So it was validation for my siblings and I, which we knew. We did have one experience where my father witnessed a daytime apparition come right into the living room while we were watching television. And so this place was extremely haunted with multiple spirits in it for some reason. And the families that I've communicated with, they don't know each other, but there's very similar experiences. There's some commonalities there, which is really interesting. And I'm still getting information just this past week. I've got some information, which I wrote down a couple quotes from people. It shocks me, really. It's amazing.
All this research, what are you going to do once you keep pulling all this stuff together with all of this stuff just from that house alone?
Yeah, well, I retired in 2023 with the thought that I'm going to come forward and actually open up and talk about this, because I've kept quiet for many years because people look at you like you're crazy when you talk about such subjects. And I had a profession where, I was working as for a military contracting company, and you just don't come forward and start saying, "Hey, guess what? I had an apparition show up in my house last night." It doesn't work easily that way. So I've kept a low profile, but I decided I was going to come forward and not research my own life and ask questions and go back, and anybody that was a witness with me that's still around, I was going to ask, my siblings included, and see what they remembered. So I started this venture, and then it's turned into my first book, which have a manuscript that's getting edited right now. So I'm excited about that. I've always wanted to have the time to write, and then I realized that the content, I went, oh my gosh, I have so many experiences that there's enough there to fill a book. So with this, the childhood home is a book within itself, especially since I've opened up this communication with all these other people's experiences. So that's my second book, which I'm preparing to get going on this year. So that's where I'm at with that.
So you mentioned that as a child, you and your siblings experienced paranormal activity in your childhood home, but it wasn't until an adult, your father in this case, maybe your mother, that they actually believed. Is that right?
What's weird is my dad still wouldn't acknowledge it. And my mother didn't talk about such things either. It wasn't until years later, one day my dad was around, and I made him talk about the subject in front of my wife because I'm like, I'm not crazy, dang it. I want to talk. Tell me what you remember seeing, you know. So I interviewed my siblings. I was the oldest of 4 children. I have 2 sisters and a brother that lived in that house. And so we all knew, actually, the first impression that I got when I saw the house, when my parents bought it. Now, they were teenagers when I was born. So my parents were young. They were struggling in a, blue collar town. And, the neighborhood was a blue collar neighborhood. And the first time I saw the house, I remember standing there. I was about 7 years old. I was standing there looking at the house, and I went, I don't like this house. And my dad got really angry with me. And I can understand that, but it was, for whatever reason, the first impression gave me a bad vibe. And I was right about that, because as soon as we moved in, weird things started happening for us kids. And there were, at night you could hear something walking up the stairs, and the stairs creaking, and then it pacing around, and shadows on the walls pacing around. Come into your room, you could feel all the hair standing up on end, and it would sit there and stand over you and brood. We had a name for this, the man, but there was also a child ghost there that would play with our toys at night, which was really creepy to hear. And my brother and I would hear, Christmas, we got new toys. And one of them was a metal hockey game thing where you had these levers, and old school stuff. And one night my brother and I were in bed, and all of a sudden we heard muffled voices in the closet. Our closet was it went from one end of the house to the other. It was pitch dark in there, even during the daytime. There was a little window in the center, but the corners were just pitch black, and it was always creepy. And we could hear some muffled voices, which I would hear quite often at night, muffled voices. But this time we heard the levers going off on our games, and we were like, oh, they're playing with our new games. And so interestingly, when talking with these other 3 families, 2 of them acknowledged that there was a man and a boy ghost in that house as well. So and there were others as well, but that just gave us such validation. And one day, while we were watching television, this is the early 70s, so we were probably watching the Brady Bunch. I don't know, maybe, or Partridge Family, something. It was a weekend, I believe. It must have been a Saturday. My mom was working, but my father was in the living room with us, and we were just sitting there watching television. And I noticed something in my peripheral vision, and I was the closest one to the entrance of the living room. And I turned my head, and I was in absolute shock at what I saw. And it sounds so bizarre. I hesitate to say what I saw, but I got validation from other family members. But I looked over, and about my head height, where I was sitting in the chair, maybe a little taller than that, was this glowing orb. It was more than an orb, actually, but it was this ball of energy, and it looked like a storm almost, but it was round. And it was the size of, maybe, I'd say smaller than a basketball, but, maybe a soccer ball or something, or a tether ball. I don't know. It was the size of a kid's head, basically. And it started floating in the room right towards me, right in front of me, actually. But when I looked at it, I saw it really close up, and oh God, it's so embarrassing to say. It had eyes in it. And it looked like thunderstorm clouds or something there with electricity. It was so weird. And it just started floating right in front of me. And I was in shock. And then my siblings, my dad saw it. And I jumped up, and my dad jumped up. And this thing got startled, and it took off. And it flew past everybody, and it ran into the bedroom, my parents' bedroom, went around the door. And my dad and I and my little brother ran after it, and it went into the closet, and things started moving around in the closet, and it went into a paper bag, and my dad grabbed the bag, and then he looked in it, and there was nothing there. Wow. And my dad was he's 6'2". He was a big, strong, hardworking, blue-collar guy, and I saw fear on his face, and I dropped the F-bomb on him at that time. And I said, I told you this place was haunted and you never listened to us. What was that? And he's like, I was a bird. I'm like, that was no bird. Birds have wings. Birds have feathers. That was no bird, and you know it. And he could not answer, but I knew that he was freaked out. But he didn't want to talk about it. But when in front of my wife years later, I said, I want you to tell me what you said. He goes, I don't know. It was some weird thing. It looked like something you would draw. You were drawing back then. I was like, what do you mean? I draw all kinds of weird stuff. He goes, well, you were drawing what looked like a cloud with eyeballs in it. And I used to do these goofy characters, and I would put little bubbles with comments. They usually were protest things like, no more baby food or no pay toilets or silly things. I was a 10-year-old or 10-year-old kid at the time when this happened. But yeah, he said it had eyes, and I looked at my wife and went, see, I told you, I'm not crazy. But my siblings saw the same thing, basically, and yeah, that was weird.
Would you consider that your most unsettling experience that you had?
Oh, gosh.
I mean, what could beat that?
Yeah, I know.
Gosh.
Well, being that was in the daytime and there were other witnesses, that's kind of a relief, It's when it's happening to you and other people are unaware of something, that's when it's really messes with your head. And I've had experiences throughout my life of all kinds, but I've had worked at a couple places that had weird things, and whatever's there, it knows that I know that it's there, and it comes around, especially when other people aren't around, and that's when something's standing right next to you, and you can feel that energy and everything, but you can't see it, and that is really scary because you don't know what it is, And so I've had a lot of really freaky, strange experiences through the years.
Yeah, to actually feel versus see something, feeling something could be equally.
Yeah, I always know when there's something like that around, that energy. Usually I'll get covered with goosebumps. The hair will stand up. I feel like the hair stands up on my arms and my head sometimes even. And, it's just, or I may walk into a building and just know something has occurred there or whatever, So it's interesting, but I think some of that comes from my grandmother. And, I've had a lot of psychic dreams and other, telepathic communication type things through the years as well.
Now, being that you're in Central Florida, I mean, there's books out about haunted Central Florida and stuff. Have you actually pursued or gone to any of the places here?
No. That's the thing is I haven't gone out looking for these things typically. But if I go on a vacation, sometimes I seem to pick out the wrong place. Many times we end up in a strange situation on a vacation. I've worked again. Some of the places that I've worked, there were weird things going on. So I have really not gone out. I have gone actually on a couple investigations since I retired. I'm a student at the Rhine Research Center, which is in Durham, North Carolina. Durham? I think it's Durham. And they have online classes. And so I'm studying parapsychology. And I really am enjoying those classes. So it kind of gives you a more scientific approach to things. And, it's just really interesting. So I've been taking that. And so I've joined a couple people. My whole thing would be, what would I want to do with that rather than just having a thrill of going after ghosts for that sake, and I don't want anything coming home with me. But I'm interested in helping people who are going through these things because it can be really frightening and it can affect your life in a great way. And, my wife and I bought our first home, was haunted, and we had to, quietly live in this really difficult situation and not be able to openly go about sharing that with people. And we didn't know how to handle that either. So, and I thought, what are the odds that these things happen to me? How can this be that all this stuff happens? Am I drawn to it and then go, hey, yeah, this is a perfect place for us. Let's buy it.
Have you ever had any visitations from the other side, or maybe somebody personal to you contact you?
Yeah, actually, I have. Through the years, I've had family members who passed on that have visited me. The first time that I remember that happening was I was an art student living in South Florida, and I had a dream about my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather was an amazing artist and craftsman. And so I revered him and looked up to him. But he passed away when I was 13 years old. And now I was like 22 years old or whatever when this dream happened. But it was not just a normal dream. It was so vivid and it was very specific. And, all of a sudden I see my great-grandfather sitting there. And it was funny. He was sitting in a lawn chair circa 1960s. With the aluminum frame and the old straps that are in there. And there's Grandpa Abert sitting there. And I was shocked. I was like, Grandpa Abert, what are you doing here? And he says, well, I just wanted to talk to you about your career. And said he was happy that I was going to art school and that he believed in I'll get emotional thinking about it. Mm-hmm. He believed in me and it just told me to follow my dreams and don't give up on it and hone my crafts and my, and so I was so excited and it was just a short little thing and it's like telepathic, I guess, or whatever. There's no mouths, but I'm looking at each other and there's a communication and, but they're usually fairly quick. But when I woke up, I thought, oh my gosh, I saw Grandpa Abert, and was surprised by it. Well, I tried to tell my grandparents who were snowbirds and down in South Florida at the time, and my mom, and they were just looking at me like, okay, yeah, that's weird. But interestingly, my great-grandmother was still alive, and they had a trailer because they were snowbirds way back. And I would go over to his trailer and go and bring groceries to my great-grandmother and so forth. So there was still a connection to my grandfather, but I hadn't seen him in, like I say, a long time. But that was the first time that I said, I don't care if anybody believes in me or not. I know that he came to see me, Mm. But since then, I've had numerous visitations from family members, and usually they're always a beautiful experience where there's a hug and I've seen my aunt and I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I just wanted to come and say hello to you and kind of a thing. But there were a few other cases where there was actually more to that than just a quick visitation from family members, which I could count several of them like that. And they're very vivid, as I said, and you remember everything. But one of them was when my father passed away. And I was mourning his loss, and I was sleeping out on my couch. So not to keep my wife awake, and I'm an insomniac anyways, but I fell asleep, and then I saw my father standing over me while I was laying on the couch. And, I was like, oh, Dad, I was really happy to see him. And it was more of a feeling rather than words put in there. But when I woke up, I was like, oh my gosh, I saw my dad. And then I thought, wait, he was wearing a Viking helmet. What in the world was that all about? And I thought, that's weird. Why would Dad be wearing a Viking? And then I thought, oh my gosh, of course, William the Viking. We would make jokes about our Swedish heritage and the fact that my father was a big guy with a big beard and he's a burly, strong guy, and so I thought he's just trying to cheer me up by showing up with this, right? Because he would joke around about going to Valhalla and stuff. So, but I thought that was so odd. And before his funeral, he lived up north in South Carolina, and he got ill from cancer, and I tried to keep in touch with him the best that I could and get to see him when I could. But it's hard when you have a family and a full-time job and everything. Well, it just was one of those things where I was so excited, but I decided I wanted to go see a psychic after that. And when I did see this psychic, he looked at me and goes, "Did your father pass away recently?" And I went, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, I feel his presence." He goes, "There's something really weird. I see him wearing a Viking helmet." I swear. And I was just floored when this guy said that. And he goes, "What does that mean?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible." I said, "That's my father, and he's making a joke about it." And he goes, "Well, it's not even a nice Viking helmet. It's like a cheap plastic one." And I said, "Yeah, well, that would be my dad." And at my dad's funeral, we went back to his home, and my stepmother pulled out a big photo album, and we were going through the photo album. And I turned a page, and there's a photo of my father standing there wearing a cheap plastic Viking helmet. I had never seen it before. He was on, I don't know where he was, a vacation somewhere, but it just blew my mind. And I took a photograph. It's in my phone somewhere here. And every once in a while, I have to look at that because it just amazes me.
Wow. That's not validation. What is?
Yeah. I mean, so yes, a lot of strange things like that have happened.
Well, and I mean, thank you so much for sharing some of that. I can just say for me, in Central Florida, we have some place that's known to be very haunted, especially the third floor. And I actually ended up working on the third floor during COVID. So it was very eerie, especially because for the most part, it was empty. So I wouldn't say I had an encounter per se, but I will tell you, like the hairs on my arms, the back of my neck, there would be times I walk by and I'm like, "Oh, I saw someone." I would walk back. I'm like, no one's there. So, I don't have the experience like you do, but I mean, I believe in respecting the supernatural. Well, I try to respect everyone, but the supernatural, just because I'm like, I don't want to go taunt a ghost. I don't want it to follow me home either. I know there's more out there than I can explain. So, I really don't want to offend anything, but I also know there's more out there than we know.
Yeah, absolutely. During COVID, I went through something very much the same. A lot of the people that worked with me, they went home and worked from their computers, and I was in the shop mixing up stuff and by myself. And the first experience I had in that building, I ran into this thing when the alarm company contacted me when we first moved in. But constantly when you're in there by yourself, when I was in there by myself, it messes with your mind a little bit. I've been trying to keep busy, and I knew I could tell when it was coming. And I actually I bought some equipment, and I would set it up like alarms for myself to know, even though I could feel when it was coming around, but it'd get the meters start going and the lights start flashing. And I'm like, "Oh, here it comes." But it just messes with your mind too, because you don't know what you're dealing with.
So I'm guessing you have a EMF reader.
Yeah, I have that.
What other equipment do you have?
Oh, I have, let's see. Yeah, EMF. I have REM pod. I have, I don't have a lot of expensive equipment, but I'm just started getting into a lot of it was for my own self. So, but now I'm interested in purchasing some other items, but just a digital recorder and a few other items. I can't think of offhand, but I've got a collection of little things.
Oh, I mean, that's great. That's more of a start than I have. I have a broken EMF reader, I mean, it might
They're not
work.
that expensive.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, it's not like I'm going out going, hey, here, ghosty, ghosty, ghosty.
Maybe now you will.
Maybe. I don't know. Again, I've been on some of the paranormal, I hate to say hunts because I feel like then we're actively hunting the ghost, but I've been to some of those, a paranormal or two event where you're at places that have haunted history. Mm-hmm. Hey, Patricia, aren't you currently watching a show that Barry's working on or worked on?
Yes, Secrets of the Dead.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So I started to change my career from working in film to doing more science, where science and art meet. And I got involved with doing some documentary work, recreating crime scenes with police agencies and the coroner's office and so forth. And because of that, I ended up working on PBS's Secrets of the Dead. The episode I was involved with was about a gangland. I can't remember what the title is offhand, but gangland graveyard is what it was. And so, yeah, there was a dumping ground that the gangsters were burying some of the people that they wanted to whack. Hey, I'm going to whack you. And so it got into, it was pretty interesting. But I would work with, a lot of times, somebody who is an anthropologist or actually a medical examiner on these. And I've also worked on some other documentaries. I worked on National Geographic's The Mummy Roadshow, and recreated an Incan mummy. And I got to work with some scientists, and I ended up traveling to Peru, up into the Andes Mountains, to study Chachapoyan mummies with these scientists. Here I am, the wacky artist. Because I was making fake mummies, I ended up getting a chance to study real mummies, which was fascinating. And it all kind of got into that forensic art type of thing. So, yeah, it's weird how my interests have kind of swayed. It's not paranormal, although I thought about we were looking at mummies, and I thought just a little pinch of mummy dust, And I thought, no, I'm not going to get in an airplane with that, So
It's all related.
Well, I just want to say how much I've enjoyed spending all of this time with you. I mean, your history, your stories, just the spectrum of topics that, we've been able to cover. And I wish we had hours more to spend with you, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for being just part of this journey with me today. And we look forward to having you back because I know you're currently working on your book.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it would be great to come back. I am working on a book, and currently I'm just getting ready to do some illustrations for it. And that is my first book, and then I have some plans I'm hoping to write three books, but first one is well underway, and so I'm really looking forward to getting that together, and I would love to come back.
Maybe you could come back with your equipment and test out our studio. Maybe we have some
You want
some
to do an
fun.
investigation? Let's do it.
Let's do it. We're down.
We'll do an investigation. You tell us when, and we'll come back and do the investigation.
I'm in.
I'll bring my broken EMF.
Barry, what's the title of your book?
My first book is A Life That Haunts Me, and then I have the next book after that is going to be The Home That Still Haunts Me.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us. It really has been a treat to kind of explore and delve into all of this. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Until next time.
I really enjoyed myself. Thank you so much. I really had a lot of fun. See you later, folks.